Greetings. So we're here at the Arizona Laser Cron Laser Ablation ICP-MS laboratory, and today we're analyzing detrital zircons for their uranium-lead compositions from the Gulf of Mexico. Today I'll be showcasing our new data reduction program that we've developed to visualize and interrogate the data real-time during an analytical session. We have the laser and the mass spectrometer running right now, and we have an automated routine that is collecting data, and we're actually reducing this data real time. Now, there are a number of advantages to reducing and actually seeing the data in real time. One, it actually serves as a cost-saving measure. For a detrital sample, if you have a very simple age distribution, you may not need to analyze hundreds of grains. You can actually just stop the acquisition once you've shot about 40 or 50. Another example is maybe something goes wrong with the machine and it actually stops recording, or something else goes wrong. You can actually see that real time, halt the analytical session, address whatever problems, and then start anew. The graphical user interface, or GUI, is a single window that contains basically any information that the researcher would want either during or after the analytical session. Things like fractionation correction, general session details, information on individual analyses, or a summary of the data in the form of an age distribution. Now, right now we are actually automatically reducing the data as it comes off of the element 2 in real time. So you'll see every so often the plots will all go blank, and it's actually, there we go, actually we're parsing out the data, the brand new data that's been read from the element 2, and re-reducing it in real time. I'd actually like to turn off the automatic reduction to show you how simple it is to read in the data directly from the element 2. So first thing I'll do is uncheck this automatic reduce button. That'll kick off the data reduction one more time, basically kind of as a refresh. Now that that's done, we'll go to this select input push button. We'll navigate to where the data is being written to from the element 2. And for us, that is here on the desktop of the PC. The data is being written to this data folder here. Then all we do is say select folder. Now we have the option of either simply reducing the data once. If this were, say, after an analytical session, we'd reduce the data. It takes maybe 5 seconds to do that for a complete analytical session. Or if we're in the middle of an analytical session like we are right now, we can select again this automatic reduce button, and this will kick off the reduction once every 60 seconds or whatever the researcher is interested in doing. One of the main things that a researcher will be interested in observing during an analytical session is the session drift of the machine, or the fractionation through time during the analytical session. Because the element 2 is a high-resolution sector field instrument, we actually monitor 3 separate standards of varying concentrations of uranium. And that's what's shown here in these different triangles and crosses. So we have analysis number through time and the fractionation correction on the y-axis. So we analyze individual standards and unknowns in between. So we call this sample standard bracketing. Typically, we'll monitor the lead-206 uranium-238 concentration because that is most affected by this session drift. Alternatively, we have the option to look at different isotopic systems. So here we can check this tick box and look at the lead-206, lead-207 fractionation through time. Now you notice that the fractionation is much less. We're actually very close to 1, and that's because these 2 isotopes are very close to one another. We also have the option to monitor lead-208, thorium-232. You'll see there's a lot of scatter here. There's just inherently a lot of scatter in the system, and typically we really don't even bother with this for uranium-lead analysis. So we'll stick with lead-206, uranium-238. This is a general session details plot. Now this contains information about how the standard material is behaving, the ages of the unknowns, and a variety of other things. During the analytical session or after, the researcher can go through and select anything they want to see. Typically, they're interested in how the unknowns are behaving. So here's a general Concordia diagram with 206, 238 on the y-axis, 207, 235 on the x. And you can see the uncertainties are actually quite low on this diagram. So what I'm going to do is actually zoom in on one of these populations of ages. To zoom in on this Concordia diagram, or actually any plot in the graphical user interface, it's as simple as navigating to the top left here and selecting this little magnifying glass and clicking and dragging into the region of interest. So you can see these error ellipses are quite small. And say the researcher was actually interested in only this age population, they have the option to set the axes here, and if they were automatically reducing, it would just populate that part of the window. You can also look at the different standard materials, also as Concordia plots. So here we have Sri Lanka zircon. Looks like it's behaving well. The green dot is the accepted age from TIMS. R33 standard. It's kind of a tertiary standard in this sense, but it's also behaving pretty well. And then FC, it's our third standard here. Again, looks like we're behaving quite well. Another option, because these Concordia diagrams can get a little bit messy, we can actually turn off the error ellipses and generate a three-dimensional Concordia diagram out of that information. And so here you see we have a three-dimensional volume that tells us the probability, the best probability of those Concordia error ellipses. Any of these plots can be exported either during or after the session and save this figure as either a raster or vector image for editing in, say, a data repository or for a paper manuscript figure. Other things the researcher might want to look at are age versus uranium concentration, age versus total radiation dosage, age versus uranium thorium ratio. There's basically all kinds of different options that the researcher has. And the nice thing about this graphical user interface and the setup using MATLAB is if a researcher wants something very specific, I can actually go in and implement that in a very short amount of time. One of the most powerful aspects of the design of this graphical user interface is the ability to go in and interrogate individual analyses and specific isotopes of an individual analysis. On the bottom left here, we have a list box showing the individual names of each analysis that has been run so far. So we have about 350 unknowns. By default, the program will automatically plot the last analysis run. So if you have it automatically reducing, you can just sit back and watch each analysis come in real time. What I want to do now is actually just click through some of the individual analyses. And so you can see the plots for intensity of each individual isotope through time as you drill down into the zircon is updated, and also a Concordia plot of that individual analysis. You'll notice that some of the names in this list box have been flagged as red. So if we click on one of these, the program will actually tell me why this analysis was rejected. You can see that it says it's discordant, and the Concordia line in the Concordia plot is nowhere to be seen. Now this analysis and all of these analyses in the list box that are red have been flagged by one of a variety of filters that are built into this program. We've implemented basically standard filters that are used in just about any laser ablation uranium lead laboratory. These include percent uncertainty cutoffs for 206, 238, percent uncertainty cutoffs for 206, 207, uncertainty cutoffs in the standard material itself, discordance cutoffs for positive and reverse discordance, as well as filters for common lead. We've made the program very flexible, so a researcher can go in and change any of these filters to whatever the agreed specifications for their individual lab group are. So for example, they can go in and change the 206, 238 uncertainty to 20% if that's what's agreed upon in their group. And so you can see this will actually kick off the reduction and give a fresh reduction based on whatever value you put in there. We can click through any of these flagged analyses, and of course it will tell us why it was rejected. Sometimes it's not immediately apparent based on the intensity plot to the right. Other times will be pretty obvious that it was a bad analysis. So for example here, we measured background, then we start ablating the zircon, and at about 15 seconds, our signal dies completely down, and it appears that we've drilled completely through that zircon. Clearly it's a bad analysis, and it tells us that it ends up giving an age that is reverse discordant and has high 6/8 error. So definitely should not be included in the final reporting of the data. For the data that passes the different filters, these data are reported here in Concordia diagram. Zoom in on the Concordia diagram. See, the blue analyses are accepted through the filters. The red are the ones that are rejected. Some of these correspond to very high error ellipses, or they might be reverse discordant. The final data that's filtered is also reported down here in the bottom right as an age distribution. So most of the work we do here at the Lasercron Center is detrital zircon work. And one of the best ways to visualize these data, looking at them as binned histograms or as probability plots. So here on the x-axis we have age of the individual grains from 0 to 3,000 million years or 3 billion years. On the y-axis right now we actually have number. And so this corresponds to the number of the histogram. We give the researcher a variety of options, as there are a number of different ways to visualize an age distribution. These can be visualized as histograms, probability density plots, which is a traditional way to visualize them. Researchers can visualize them as a kernel density estimate, or some combination of these three. By default, the program automatically plots a histogram, a probability density plot, and a kernel density estimate. If the researcher is not interested in looking at the data from 0 to 3,000 million years, we also give them the option to change the scale. So we can set this. Say they're interested in everything younger than 1,000 million years. It's as simple as changing that 1,000 million years, hitting enter, and now you can see an updated plot. Now all of these options, including those that I showed earlier for the Concordia diagrams or looking at individual analyses, these can all be done real-time during the acquisition, during the real-time acquisition of the data. And at any point the researcher can export this plot. Again, this figure can be saved as a vector image to be manipulated in a drafting program such as Adobe Illustrator. Now that we've interrogated our data and we're happy with the filters and the quality of the data, we'd like to save it as a summary table for ourselves, but also we'd like to upload this data to an existing database structure. You can save these results by clicking one of these push buttons here in the top middle part of the graphical user interface, so summary table. At this point, I'm going to enter the metadata for the sample so that we can upload the summary table to the Geocron database. Simple name, call it the Wilcox group. Rock type is a sandstone. Latitude in decimal degrees. Longitude also in decimal degrees. Analysis purpose, detrital zircon. Analyst name. And aliquot reference, which this is unpublished at this point, so I'm going to say NA, but I can always go back and adjust this later. So now we'll click on OK, and this will prompt a new screen asking the user where they would like to save the file. Let's go ahead and save this to the desktop. Save it. The file is saved on the desktop here as an XLS file. Opens up spreadsheet, and this is basically your data repository. So it has all of the information a researcher would need, or any other researcher that reads your publication, go through and look at your filtered data and the different isotopic ratios and your best ages. Now we can go and navigate to the geocron.org website, and you can see we have our own AgeCalcML icon here, an option to upload. So we've interfaced directly with the researchers at EarthChem and geocron.org to implement this functionality. If we click here on manual upload, every researcher has a unique GeoPass ID. To upload to the database, it's as easy as clicking on Submit Data. So we'll show this screen here. You choose File, navigate to it, click Open, and we have the option to either embargo this data or make it public. So I'd actually like to make this public just for demonstration purposes. Click Yes, Public. Overwrite doesn't matter because it doesn't exist yet, and click Submit. This is the data that we generated in the lab just minutes ago. And now if we go to Search Geocron, you can go to the detrital interface and navigate to that sample. You can see there is a lot of data out here in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's my sample. If I click on this sample, you can view the sample details, and we're back to where we started. We can even download the sample file, and we get the exact spreadsheet that we started with. At this point, we have interrogated our data. We've exported some figures that we can manipulate in Adobe Illustrator. We've saved a summary table that we've uploaded to geocron.org. One final thing we can do is save the state of the GUI and all of the information contained therein. Now, to do this, we can do is go up to the top middle part of the GUI and click on Save Session. This will prompt a window, will give us an option to save it. We'll place it on the desktop again. And what this is going to do is save a machine-readable form of the data that will no longer need to access the raw data. Save it as. The file format will be a .mat file, and save this to the desktop. We've saved a machine-readable format of the data. At this point, when we open this file, it will actually close down the GUI momentarily and open it back up in the exact state that the GUI was in. And we can basically just pick up where we or whatever researcher left off. So if you wanted to go back and look at, say, their standard analyses, you can do so. You can even come over here and change their filters, re-reduce their data just to see what effect it may have. This allows researchers to go back and explore the detail of each individual analytical session. And so that concludes this video on our new data reduction routine here at the Arizona Lasercron Center.